Pontus join us.
Okay.
And so if your statement struck a chord in me, the statement on me being perhaps a little bit unprofessional, not being like fully
I didn't
in,
say fully. I didn't say fully, but
or
okay.
I feel like I'm not as close to the concepts that you had on your
Right.
slide. You know, and you also said that AI is 70 years in the making. ChatGPT is 1.5 years old. Are we? So I take that as an opportunity. We're still early days, so there's still time for me to catch up. What are some starting points for me and people in the room that also feel that we're already a little behind?
Well, don't think of it as being behind, because that puts a lot of pressure, negative pressure. Rather explore the limits of the field. Like we were very fast as a field moving to mobile first design. You know, we were sitting at bigger and bigger and bigger screens. All of a sudden we realized, oh, we need to design for this little screen now. And that happened overnight in 2012, right? You guys remember this, when you started wireframing on small screens instead? And I think, well, here's an even bigger change with adaptive, personalized, agentive systems and services. That's a new design material, and you should be just as critically enthusiastic about that as moving from a large desktop to a mobile phone screen, right? So I think a good starting point would be to read books, articles on the topic. And I guess a year ago I would say, well, play around with Midjourney and ChatGPT. I'm not so sure that's the best way now. But sure, you should get a little experience in the AI tools. But bear in mind that I said that generative AI is the visible part of the iceberg. AI with prediction and data-driven insight, that's the 90% of the bulk, and actually where the value is created as well. Supervised machine learning is still the workhorse of AI systems.
So am I hearing that? And also what I took away from both your and Nora's case is that it's not so much like, as you say, technology in the front, it's more technology in the back, and that we need to learn to how to sort of get those technologies into our systems and also maybe be collaborating with them instead of seeing them as replaces of our work.
Yeah. I mean, as a human-centered designer, I think we're all schooled in saying that technology is just an enabler and the human experience and all that is the key. That's what we're working with. So technology is an asset to accomplish that. However, when it comes to automation, that's the real... That's a little different, because now we can automate entire workflows. And of course, if you are a technology-first person, you tend to exaggerate how much of the workflow and how deep the depth of the workflow that you can automate. And we've seen multiple, the internet is full of mistakes when we've automated too much, right? So I think collaboration between AI and humans is the way to go. I tend to think of a lot of the cognitive work we do is about decision making. And I tend to think that AI is good at prediction and humans are good at judgment. So you can decouple decision making by separating prediction from judgment. And if you strip away the human judgment part of it, you get all these mistakes that we see again and again and again. So, yeah. And also I want to say, you said something about the first contact of AI being ChatGPT. I don't agree. I think the first contact with AI is the curated algorithmic newsfeed in all our social media. That's our first contact with AI in a general sense. And as you all know, the last 10 or 15 years, we haven't handled that very well, right? So start there. Algorithmic curated content, that's one way to start.
And I think, again, Nora's points were very, very important in that, both as sort of us shaping the tools, but also us using the tools and sort of learning to unfold what happens between before that is shown to us. So.
Yeah.
Questions from the audience. Microphone by Reta, my colleague, Foresight lead at MidEvolution, and who has been facilitating this whole process. So hands up if you have a question, and don't forget to say your name and also what work you do.
Hello? Yes, it works. So this is a thought formulating, but I have a question for Paul, because I thought you had it was an interesting point of why am I reading it if no one put sort of thought into writing it or something like that. And we heard about bias before, and one of the critique that we have of AI today is that we don't really know what's the bias of it, or what's the intent. So then my question is, if I can steer the AI, if I can input my intent into it, would then the output make more sense and be more valuable? Because communication, as you said, communication between two people. I mean, let's say I put my intent, because normally communication is some kind of intent. I put that into the AI, and then the AI would generate something that you read. Would it then be acceptable? And it's not that I have a point here. I'm just like, that's something that came to my mind.
No, I think it's an interesting question. And it goes back to, so we have invoked, but not actually quoted today, Marshall McLuhan, as already mentioned. And that sense of, if we think of these systems as, I think it's really important that we think of them as systems as well. Talking about ChatGPT as it is ascribes to it an agency, and it's linguistically really hard to do, right? Because of the way we narrate the world, it's really hard for us not to put agency into a thing, which is really a collection of data centers and bits of software and so on and so forth. But this, if we think of that system as a medium, not just in the simple sense that like a CD or a USB drive is a medium in the strict sense, but in the much broader sense, in the way that television is a medium, right? It's not just the television in your house, it's the whole system of broadcast and production and everything else. If we think of generative systems as a medium, and we approach them with that understanding that the interaction, so your interaction where you pass into the medium an instruction and that then passes some sort of message to me. If we understand that systemicity, big words for a Tuesday morning, apologies for that. But if we approach it in that way, and we understand that because of the hugeness of that, there are so many other elements in play, right? The questions of, I was really pleased to see Pontus bringing up the question of, okay, so if we use these things, there will be benefits, but to whom? For whom? Whose stakes are in play, and who's benefiting? So it's I'm not sort of like, I'm not. I suppose one way to put this is, I'm a Luddite, and I am proud to say I'm a Luddite, because the Luddites were not opposed to technology. They were opposed to technology being used to take away the employment and autonomy of skilled people. And I think if we approach this technology with a view to not doing that, then fine. I think we should approach all technology that way. I am possibly slightly less hopeful than Pontus that will actually occur, but I'm a cynic, and that's why I'm a science fiction writer.
Any more questions? Name and what you work with. There is one question here.
Hi. I get up. My name is Kasia Gruszka. I was also part of the cycle, and I'm from the Data Society crew. I have a very easy question, more of an entertaining one, I think, for myself at least. So, Pontus, you mentioned that the internet is full of examples of over-automation. Do you have some favorite examples to share with us? Maybe just some...
Yeah, well there's one fun examples that I sometimes show is during the pandemic, the Scottish football leagues were played for empty audiences, right? Because we were in physical isolation. The lower league games were not covered by national TV. So this a company called Pixelot, they came up with the idea of how about we just train an AI camera, put on the center line, and we train it to follow a circular light or white shape on this green background, which is the soccer field. And then we can actually automatically broadcast all the league games to people at home, right? And that works great in the lab, I'm sure. But then a referee with my haircut comes into play. So you have like two white shapes to follow. And the resulting of that is that as soon as a player in the attack obscures the ball, it immediately goes back to the center line and films the referee just standing there. So it's like the user experience of that was horrible, because you're better off not watching the game, because you miss all the attacks, all the goals, and you just get a good glimpse of a referee. That's one example, because you underestimate what the camera person actually does. A camera person does not just follow a ball. It also knows that there is one ball in play, and it's not attached to a body, and all kinds of things that we implicitly don't realize is part of a job. Like, we have a very sometimes naive view on what a job is, and there's a lot of tacit knowledge and context awareness that is not part of any AI model. So that's one example.
Name and what you work with.
So Isa, and I'm an experienced strategist designer at IKEA. I came here partly because of the topic and really inspiring talks of you, but also because I'm trying to disrupt my own way of working by partly having one day off a week. We talked about that before. But I would like to know from both of you, I think, how can we disrupt the system that we're in from within the system? And seeing you as maybe two people that are beyond the system, in a way, you being at a university and you being a science fiction writer. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's an age-old question for any kind of movement, I guess. Do you change from within, or do you rebel from the outside? That goes for politics and all kinds of things. I don't know. But if you are within, then perhaps what I just mentioned, like if you have your tried and true customer journey map tool, right? It sort of defaults you into a linear thinking. Maybe you as a designer can create new tools, new design tools, because they will template you into your next project. And when you're in a project, you can't think all these big thoughts every day, right? You sometimes just need to work. So then you need really good tools that default you into the right way of working. So maybe creating new design tools. And I've said this for years. I sometimes show a picture of 1984 music covers, like Wham, and you know, some of you are old enough to actually know this. And I say, well, the service blueprint, Showstack presented it the same year. We have a tool that is 50 years old, or 40 at least, right? It's time for new kinds of tools. So that would be my response.
One more question.
Well, Paul needs to answer as well.
I'm so sorry, Paul.
It's okay. It's it's going to be a very.
I'll hide behind the curtain.
It'll be a very profound answer as well. You'll really regret not letting me speak. I'm not so sure that my experience as a science fiction writer particularly is helpful in answering that question, but I think my experience as a writer more broadly, which means I am a person who is deeply concerned with the meaning of words. And, you know, and for example, we could start with disruption, right? Which is, you know, disruption is a very, it's a word to conjure with at the moment, you know, particularly the last 10 years or so. But it's very multivalent, right? I mean, you know, disruption is apparently wonderful when you're the CEO of a big firm, but like if you know, if I'm stuck on the Pågatåg and trying to get home, disruption is not good news at all, right? And I think I would go back to, so Noora was conjuring with the word efficiency. And efficiency is a very interesting word. I've been thinking a lot about it since I moved to Sweden, because in Swedish you use the same word for effective and efficient. And in English those are different words. I mean, they're related, and there's some overlap, but they're not the same thing. And that started me looking at the kind of etymological roots of that word, and also how it gets used in different spaces. And so I'm going to ask you a question in return. If I was to say to you, I have a process here that is highly efficient, what would you take that to mean about the way I was working with resources in that process? Mm-hmm. So I think a show of hands. Who, if I said to you I was doing something efficiently, how many of you would think, oh, okay, Paul is doing something there in a way that uses the fewest, the least amount of resources possible? Right, and that's the kind of common sense reading of what efficient means, right? If you speak to an economist, efficiency means almost exactly the opposite of that. When an economist speaks of an efficient market, they mean a market that uses every single last drop of available resources, every single last drop of manpower, and uses it completely, to the point, okay, the waste goes off the books because we externalize that. That's someone else's problem. An efficient market uses all the stuff, which is not what we think efficient means at all. So we have this very weird situation where economists and the people who hang out with economists can appear on the news and say, oh, we need to be more efficient. And we're all like, yeah, it sounds like a good idea. But they don't mean quite the same thing. So to loop back in a very writerly way to your original question, I think I would want us all to spend a lot more time thinking. And I guess, Pontus suggests we need new tools. I think we need to think very carefully about the words we use, because words are tools as well. Language was the first technology. Language is the technology that all the other technologies take as their context. I think we could do with getting back to that.
Yeah, for sure.
Whoa. Spontaneous applause. I think that's the first time ever at a seminar we get a spontaneous applause.
Good job.
Well, we have time for one more question, actually, if there is one. Otherwise, it's also okay.
So the problem with these headsets is you can't do a mic drop.
We have so much. There's so many new things that we can do here. I have one final question for both of you, and that is, what's a future of your digital work going forward? How do you envision yourself as a worker in 20 years or so?
Oh, wow. I hope that the tools that we use, we would today call them AI tools. In 20 years, they will not be called AI tools, because AI will have evolved to mean something else, as it has done the last 70 or 80 years. But what I think and hope is that the tools I use will be responsible, transparent, and we're talking about costs, like you were mentioning. Economists have a tendency to externalize a lot of costs. And you said that, for example, generative text would be cheaper than you. And I'm not sure. If you take the whole equation, it's not cheaper than you, because of the raw material extraction, the unfair labor exploitation, and data theft, and all that. That's a huge cost. Right? So I think the tools in 20 years, I hope, because I'm perhaps a little bit more optimistic, I hope they will be more fair, transparent, robust, but it won't happen automatically, as I alluded to at the end of my speech. It will require conscious effort from everyone here. But if we do that, I think the AI tools that I will use will, first of all, not be AI tools, they will just be tools, and they also would be fair, robust, transparent, resilient. That's my hope.
Thanks.
I think I'm too tied up in the physicality of my writing practice for, I'm not sure I could I still write a lot by hand, and that I don't think, you know, that feels like, you know, it's like asking a painter to stop using brushes. I don't think I could take that out of the process. So I'm not sure, you know, I'm very hesitant to make predictions about how technologies might affect that side of my works. I don't think they will. I don't think it's really changed again, you know, since language became a thing. You know, you do something here and you do something here and something comes out. I would, you know, I wouldn't mind, you know, so I'm a small business owner and I use Fortnox for keeping my books, and Fortnox, I signed up, promised to make keeping my books very easy, and I can imagine it could be harder, but nonetheless, it's not quite as easy as it could be yet. So I'm hoping that perhaps in 20 years' time, when obviously I will have so much business going through the books that I'll really need the help, hopefully Fortnox will be just totally on top of that for me. That would be quite great. But nonetheless, I hope there will be an accountant who can look over the end of the year stuff for me as well. I'd want to, you know, so that question of discernment, I think, you know, to joking aside, that question of, yes, automation, but finally human discernment and judgment at the end of the sequence. That will do.
Paul, Pontus, thank you so much for coming up.